Hello everyone. Today is July 1st, 2019, around 4:30 p.m. It is 89 degrees Fahrenheit, about 29 degrees Celsius. So a little bit of a hot and humid day. I'm at the DeWitt Clinton Park right now, and I'm going to take you on a walk through the entirety of 53rd Street in Midtown Manhattan. So DeWitt Clinton Park is named after DeWitt Clinton, and he helped found a business on the Hudson River with the Erie Canal as the connection. This park here became the biggest park in the area, in the neighborhood. And it's also the first community garden in New York City. This is also the only park in the area with a lighted athletic field. And there's a New York City Parks Department employee checking out the park. Some nice flowers around here. So I'll just tell you a little bit about 53rd Street. It's a crosstown street which runs east to west or west to east, depending which direction you're coming from. And it's 1.83 miles long. That's 2.94 kilometers. I'm amazed I was able to cross the street there without stopping for any traffic. It is a pretty wide street. That's 11th Avenue, which marks the start of 53rd Street. So this street is particularly famous for many notable attractions, including Rockefeller Center, the Sullivan Theater, the MoMA, Museum of Modern Art. A few companies have their businesses here, and also the IND subway trains. Now I'm just going to point my camera up because here's the Mercedes house. I do believe it's affiliated with the car company, but it is a vehicle and service center and residential building. The areas around here do seem kind of residential. I started off, man, that alarm's annoying. It's what happens in New York. But wow, nice horse there. Yes, horses and carriages are still around in New York City. But I just started this walk in the neighborhood of Hell's Kitchen. It's the name of the neighborhood which has stood out the most and is the most popular. But other names for the neighborhood include Clinton, named after DeWitt Clinton, which I mentioned before, and Midtown West, sometimes abbreviated to Midwest. But Hell's Kitchen is what most New Yorkers refer to this area as, and it's called Hell's Kitchen due to a variety of reasons, which no one really seems to know where the origin comes from. But this was a area with a lot of slums back in the day, and many Irish men settled in the area. So that's presumably where Hell's Kitchen came from. It also had a lot of meaning from the Five Points, which was a neighborhood in Lower Manhattan that wasn't very friendly. It had a lot of gangs and sanitary issues and all this kind of things. And right now I'm pointing my camera at the AT&T building. It takes up about a quarter of the block. It's noticeable because it doesn't have any windows at all, and it holds AT&T's long distance lines. I'm not sure if that's relevant today because many people now use cell phones instead of landlines, but I'm sure that these cables and whatever technology is in that building across the street is still relevant. This is 10th Avenue now. This is a nice, I think it's a public school with a large basketball court and some lawns and a nice playground. Very well kept, that's for sure. I'll get to see what the school is, if it's a public school. And I can already tell you now it is a public school because it's run by the New York City Department of Education, pre-K for all. Our Mayor de Blasio has introduced a program called Pre-K for All, where everybody with a child can send their children here to get pre-K for free. That's one of the good things that New York City has to offer. Across the street from me, you see a building at 433 West 53rd Street. Looks like it's under construction now with a lot of tape and danger signs. But this is where the Wendy Williams show was taped. And the Wendy Williams Show is a talk show hosted by Wendy Williams, and it started airing in 2008. At 410 West 53rd Street, you'll see a building here called the Midwest Court. As I was saying to you before, Midtown West is the other name for Hell's Kitchen, and this property took its name from the shortened name of Midtown West. That's why it's called Midwest Courts. There's a building at 413 West 53rd with also some interesting architecture. The glass comes right out. Now I am approaching 9th Avenue. I did a walk on 9th Avenue through the neighborhood of Hell's Kitchen, Clinton, Midtown West, if you'd like to see that video. But I like 9th Avenue because it has a lot of restaurants and activity. Further down here is also the Port Authority bus terminal. A lot of the businesses here, you'll see the LGBTQIA plus flags hanging from the windows because Pride Month just ended yesterday, and New York City hosted the largest ever march. It also marked the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, which started the modern movement. This is New York City Department of Sanitation collecting garbage and cleaning up the streets. Most dangerous job in the city just due to the worker injuries and things that can happen with traffic. This is Meatball Shop. They specialize in meatballs. Who would have guessed? I've eaten here before and it's very good. They have many locations throughout the city. I do see quite a few people walking their dogs right now. I would have much preferred to walk pets earlier in the day because it was much cooler. Some interesting lights on this tree here. The building's name was called Lumiere, so I guess they took the idea from the name there and added it to the tree. A simple way to advertise your property and make it coincide with the theme of the name. This building looks very, very old at 340 West 53rd Street. Some of these buildings have been here for many years. Most of them, though, have been turned into high rises just because it's more efficient to get higher property values rather than keeping it 2 or 3 floors or 4 floors even. Instead, you get buildings like this over here, like this orange one. That's a lot of floors. Sometimes when they get that high up, you can't even count anymore. But the way these buildings are able to build so high is because of the zoning regulations. The city allows these buildings to be bought, and sometimes when these buildings don't have enough space to build higher, they actually buy out air rights from the properties that are around the area. So they'll say, oh, this business is not using their air rights. They only have a 4-story building. So they'll buy the air rights from that 4-story building and then build higher because they have those air rights. Otherwise, the city won't allow like 2 high-rise buildings next to each other because it will dampen the view and it won't look as good. That's the city's rationale. So here is 8th Avenue. I'm about to exit Hell's Kitchen and enter into Midtown, also the theater district. And we know it's the start of the theater district because here is Jerry Orbach Way. Jerry Orbach was a very, very famous on Broadway. He's one of the leading men who pioneered Broadway and a musical and global celebrity. He lived on the corner of 8th Avenue and 53rd Street for at least 25 years. Here's a protected bike lane on 8th Avenue. Runs along the curb with parking on the right side. So a theater is called a Broadway theater not because of its location on the street of Broadway, but it's actually because of the size of the theater. Smaller theaters will have the name as Off-Broadway, and the larger theaters will have the Broadway name attached to it. There's another horse and carriage. Very beautiful carriage. Here there's some scaffolding, so there's some work being done on the exterior of this building. No loitering area under video surveillance. That's how they deter people from doing any kind of naughty things around here. The city's also very strict on workers or people not smoking underneath the scaffolding because you know what happens when wood and smoke and fire mix. Hey, what's up? Okay, that woman doesn't want to be filmed, so I'll just point it to the side. Over there across the street is the Roundabout Theater Company at Studio 54. Here's another Broadway theater to the right of me. This I actually believe is called the Broadway Theater. Yup, the name's just called Broadway Theater. The Broadway Theater is a Broadway theater. And to the left of me is the Ed Sullivan Theater. It also hosts the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. And famously, I'll just walk over there, do a little bit of a detour off 53rd Street. I'll show you the entrance for the Ed Sullivan Theater. But the Ed Sullivan Theater hosted the Beatles. The Beatles debuted here in the United States at the Ed Sullivan Theater, and they stayed at the Hilton Midtown Manhattan Hotel, which I'm about to will pass soon. It's only about in 2 more avenues. After Broadway is 7th Avenue and then 6th Avenue, and then I'll pass by the Hilton. I'll talk about the Hilton when I get there. Okay, my battery just overheated, or my camera overheated or something, but that's what happens in the hot weather. But I was just saying that here's the 7th Avenue and 53rd Street station served by the B, D, and E trains. There is a subway which runs underneath 53rd Street, only making 3 stops though, at 7th Avenue, 5th Avenue, and Lexington Avenue. And only the E train serves all 3 stops. The B and D will go down 6th Avenue and then head north along Central Park West. So right now I'm at 7th Avenue. I'm pointing my camera right now at the Sheraton Hotel. It is the tallest hotel in Manhattan and in New York City near Times Square. It's one of the hotels that many tourists stay at when they come to visit the city. Only a few blocks down is Times Square. Times Square starts proper around 47th Street. And you can just know that Midtown's getting more busy around this area just by the amount of people walking around.
Send this out.
Looks like this is a service entrance for one of the buildings. Many of these high-rise buildings have service entrances because they don't want messengers and delivery people using the main entrance. So instead they have a service entrance. Here's something that's pretty unique in the city. You wouldn't think there are any half avenues, but here is 6½ Avenue. But it doesn't have any lanes for motor vehicle traffic. But 6½ Avenue runs from 57th Street to 51st Street, and it goes through the lobbies of many buildings. So here to the left, you can head right towards 57th Street, and to the right, you can go towards 51st Street. So pretty cool. So to the right of me is the Credit Lyonnaise building. It's also known as the JCPenney building, after the department store. Well, the department store is kind of failing now, but it was originally named after the bank Credit Lyonnaise, and then it became Credit Agricole. But now it's the Callion building. So I'm not going to say anything right now because I can't really get a good view of it, but I am passing upon the Hilton, which is the tallest hotel in Manhattan. I think I said the Sheraton was the tallest, but I correct myself. It's one of the tallest, but the Hilton is the tallest. But I'll just turn around my camera once I get across the street because it's kind of hard to see. But just a few feet down is Radio City Music Hall and Rockefeller Center. Nice sculpture there with a blue man or a blue figurine. This building across the street from me is known as the Blackrock building. It's also the headquarters of CBS Company, the entertainment and news company. And I also see Charles Schwab, which is a bank. The sign kind of gives that away. NBC, the national broadcasting company, also has a headquarters here, but it's located in Rockefeller Center, not too far away. As I stated, I'm going to turn the camera around and point the camera up at the Hilton. So this is where the Beatles stayed when they visited New York City for their United States debut. Pretty impressive building. It's actually 47 stories tall, so pretty impressive if you ask me. The CBS building, the Blackrock building, this one right here, is 38 stories tall. There is some noticeable dust in this area because under construction is the MoMA expansion tower. And the MoMA stands for the Museum of Modern Art. So what happened was this development company bought the air rights from the MoMA and another company, I forgot the name, and they're building a tower here. In exchange, the MoMA will get additional gallery space, and people will have a residence to stay at. But here it is, very impressive building being worked on right now, and it's scheduled to be completed in this year, 2019. Right now, the MoMA is closed. On a day when it's not closed, you'll see many people going inside its doors to see the modern art and constantly changing artwork. The MoMA design store across the street, however, is open. So if you'd like to grab some souvenirs, you feel free to.
How was it?
Here's the museum tower. A very good name for the building because it's located right next to the MoMA. So the MoMA expansion tower is called 53 West 53. That's the address. Also 53 West 53rd Street is also formerly known as ⁴ᴷ⁶⁷. And as of 2019, it's the 7th tallest building in the city. So it just goes to show you that the skyscrapers can keep getting bigger and bigger in New York.
So you want to be there when guests are coming. You want to be aware of what's happening right here.
So in that building, the super tall building, there's going to be 145 residences ranging from 1 to 5 bedroom options. And the lowest cost residence will start at $3 million, and the top floor penthouse will be at $80 million, maybe even over $80 million. But the residents will get free access to the MoMA, exhibition previews, discounts, and also film screenings. And if you're high enough, you'll get great views of Central Park. Here is the next subway station down the street, the 5th Avenue 53rd Street station. There's Uniqlo, the Japanese apparel company that's very popular around here. I'm actually approaching one of the busiest shopping districts in the world, 5th Avenue. Here's St. Thomas's Church, pointing the camera up, designed in the neo-Gothic style. This is an Episcopal church, but 5th Avenue, as you can see, is very crowded. People walking up and down the street doing shopping. If you want, I've walked through this avenue so many times. It's like the street that defines New York City. You can catch one of my many walks along 5th Avenue. But it's always changing. I always like seeing new people around here. And if you didn't see from the signs, the new Museum of Modern Art, the new MoMA, will open on October 21st. So I crossed over 5th Avenue right now, and the street becomes East 53rd Street. 5th Avenue is the defining boundary between East and West. Now I am going to show you a park with a lot of history. This is in memory of Samuel Paley for the enjoyment of the public. It's a unique park in that it has a waterfall. It's located at 3 East 53rd Street. And this area used to be home to the Stork Club. The Stork Club was a nightclub in Manhattan, and it hosted many celebrities ranging from Frank Sinatra to many politicians such as the Rockefellers and the Kennedys. But a very impressive park. I love 53rd Street because it goes through 3 different parks, the DeWitt Clinton Park, the Paley Park, and also the Sutton Place South Park, which I will show you at the end of the video. But the Stork nightclub was actually very famous, and it had its own problems during the end of its career. I think it ended in the 60s, but the clients were expected to dress up in silk gowns reaching the elbow with suits and neckties. You see Paley Park even extends over here with the waterfalls. But there was actually some disputes with the union, and because of those disputes and strikes, the celebrities and the high clienteles didn't visit the Stork Club anymore, and it closed shortly after. The Stork Club also has some scuffles with the city. They claim that they owed more taxes to the city and some other things, but that's some of the history of that club. So now I'm at Madison Avenue, known for the marketing and advertising industry on this street. It's synonymous with the advertising and marketing industry, actually. This building over here, the glass one, is called the Lever House. The Lever House is at Park Avenue in Manhattan, which is the next avenue over. It's built in an international style, and it's built according to the designs of Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. Big bus tour going up the avenue, taking all the sights.
You know,
here's someone's supplies with, but nobody here. Very interesting. I wonder where they went. And I do hope that they get the help and assistance they deserve. Does look like they're asking for assistance. Here's a very unique subway entrance. I just passed by a Starbucks. You won't find any limitation to the amount of Starbucks you could find in New York City, that's for sure. So here it is, 55 East 53rd Street. Owned by Blackrock. Actually, I correct myself. That wasn't the Lever building. The Lever building is over here. It's just that I confuse it because they do both look like glass boxes, although this one has the more interesting architecture due to the open space underneath. Here's the famous Park Avenue. The Metro North subway, not subway, rail line runs underneath Park Avenue, and it has the last stop at the Grand Central Terminal. But here it is. This one's the Lever House. I was kind of tipped off to it by the name too, Cafe Lever at the bottom. But it's called the Lever House because it was built in 1950 for the British soap company Lever Brothers. Okay, I have the walk signal. Now these patterns on the floor designate what is known as the box in New York City. Basically, there are fines for motor vehicles for blocking the box. But you're not supposed to be in the intersection when the light cycle turns red. Of course, I don't think it's enforced not nearly enough. But here's the Lever building from across the street. And there's the other one, which I thought was the Lever building, but wasn't. It's still very impressive, though. Many financial firms have their headquarters on Park Avenue. The Waldorf Astoria is not too far away. I know the JP Morgan Chase Company has a headquarters around here. They're one of the largest banks in the world.
I got like a Navy and then I play.
I do hope my camera doesn't overheat again or the battery overheats. That's kind of strange that it just happened like that, but it is the summertime and I guess the heat does have a problem with the cameras and the electronics, especially because I'm about to show you one of the more interesting buildings that I'm going to pass by. So the building across the street from me is 601 Lexington Avenue, formerly known as the Citigroup Center. And this tower is infamous because it became the center of an ethics study. It's unique in that it has a roof that is uniquely shaped due to counterbalancing the wind. But that's also the debate of this structure here.
I have no idea.
It was designed by William LeMessurier. It has an atrium, and it's very cool in that there is really no center. It's constructed entirely on stilts, and I'm going to take you a detour up Lexington Avenue to show you why. There were geographical reasons why this skyscraper couldn't be constructed in the traditional style, because here's St. Peter's Church, and back in the day I believe this church had some issues with the development of this skyscraper and never gave the land to it. So as a compromise, the skyscraper was allowed to be constructed, but in return, St. Peter's Church had to be reconstructed on this corner. But there came the limitations with this skyscraper. So there was a major engineering crisis at this tower in 1978 because of a design oversight. You would think that engineers have this design pretty figured out, that if this building is constructed like this, nothing will happen, right? Well, thanks to an engineering student, an undergraduate engineering student, Diane Hartley, I'm just checking if I got the name correct. Yeah, I think it's Diane Hartley, but if I'm wrong, don't hold me against it. But she informed William LeMessurier about the design flaws for this skyscraper, in that if the winds reached high enough, the building could topple over. Actually, she didn't ask her like that. She asked, oh, how would the wind react to this skyscraper? You have such an interesting design. And at first, William was like, you know, I think it will be okay, because I'm sure we got all the designs right. But then after reviewing it, it turns out that that engineering student was very, very right. And William had a big problem on his hands, because if the winds reached high enough, the building could topple over. And you know, in Manhattan, when you have skyscrapers such as this, the building could just topple over and then cause a domino effect and hit other buildings, which then crash into other buildings. So they got crews to work day and night to correct the problems of this skyscraper. They worked over 3 months. So what happened was, I'm going to stop here because I want to tell you more about the history of the skyscraper. I find it very interesting. But they worked 3 months over the course to repair it, and they didn't want the public knowing about it, because otherwise they'll just freak out. But what happened was, there was also a press strike, so the newspapers weren't publishing. So that kept the public out of the light, and good thing that happened. Because 6 weeks into the work, there was a hurricane that was slated to hit New York City called Hurricane Ella. But Hurricane Ella miraculously escaped New York City's path and swerved to the east towards Cape Cod. And because of that, the workers were able to finish the job and correct the problems with this skyscraper. The public wasn't informed of the design defects until 20 years later when it emerged. So pretty crazy. So the story of this skyscraper and William LeMessurier is in a lot of ethics textbooks, as well as a lot of ethics textbooks, as well as engineering textbooks. So this building across the street is called the Lipstick Building. It's named because it does look like a lipstick. It was also famous because I wonder what's going on. Did someone just jaywalk and not watch the traffic? But this building is famous because the Ponzi scheme mastermind Bernie Madoff had an office here. Back in 2010, he guaranteed investors a steady rate of return, but instead he just winded up stealing money from people and never giving it back. Ended up going to jail for it. But yeah, that's the history of the lipstick building. I find it pretty funny how it's called a lipstick building.
Yeah.
Kind of.
So there's a lot of restaurants and bars around here, as well as subway grates, providing some ventilation to the tunnels below. Peking Duck House, Little Tong Noodle Shop, Go-Go Curry, Insomnia Cookies. I've eaten on this stretch of 53rd Street before, and all these restaurants are very good and very delicious. You won't find any limitation to delicious food in New York, that's for sure. It's one of the best places for culinary taste in the world.
Can you lay with someone whenever?
This is 2nd Avenue. A little bit more quiet in this side of Manhattan than the rest of 53rd Street. This street does get a lot of traffic from cars wanting to take the Queens Midtown Tunnel and the Ed Koch Queensboro Bridge at 59th Street. It's also colloquially known as the 59th Street Bridge.
History. Yeah.
That's a nice piece of property across the street, the white and yellow houses. Looks very strange in between all these tall buildings, but here they are. So I was looking up about the Citigroup Center again, the 601 Lexington Avenue. And yes, it was Diane Hartley. At first they didn't know who it was, but later on she became known as the woman who saved Midtown Manhattan from destruction. This is the Sutton view. I'm about to enter the neighborhood called Sutton Place, after the street that's after 1st Avenue. Parnell's restaurant. Okay, people, relax. Honking is not going to get you anywhere any faster. It's funny how I mentioned the Citigroup Center, and there's the Citigroup Tower in Long Island City in front of me. There's a protected bike lane on 1st Avenue, and that is a very wide turn. Thank you, Maryland car driver, for yielding to me like you're supposed to. So Sutton Place is all residential. You have a lot of high-rise buildings here and great views overlooking the East River towards Queens and Brooklyn. Property for sale if any of you are interested. The asking price is probably very high, but that's how it is in Manhattan when you have a great location. There's also apartments available across the street. Here's another building under construction. A nice patio there. So the 53rd Street subway tunnel still extends under here going into Queens. You see the grates underneath. ⁴ Street marks the southern boundary of Sutton Place South, the name of the street. This is the Fdr Drive. It is one of Manhattan's only highways. It goes around the island. Well, I wouldn't say it goes around, but it runs along the east coast of the island. This is Sutton Place Park, as I talked about. One of the 3 parks that 53rd Street goes towards. A very nice park in this area. Although if you don't like car traffic and horns and car exhausts, this may not be the place for you, but it's a nice place for people to relax, nice flowers. But overall, a great community park. There's Queens across the street, and wow, that's a nice looking boat coming by. The Rockaway, the New York State flag is blowing in the wind at the top. That's Roosevelt Island, just in front of Queens, with Franklin Delano Roosevelt ⁴ ⁷ Park at the southern tip. There's Cornell Tech, one of the newer buildings for Cornell University. But that'll do it for this video, everyone. Hope you enjoy my walking tour of 53rd Street from Hell's Kitchen to Sutton Place. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for some more. Bye-bye.